my goodness gracious, everyone. It is another beautiful Monday here in the tundra, the upper Midwest. And this, of course, is the Score Minnesota Opera's podcast about opera, classical music, pop culture, as seen through the lens of folks from the global majority and thoroughly queer folks. I am your host, Rocky Jones. I am the Equity, Diversity, and Inclusion Director here at Minnesota Opera. And as always, I'm here with the amazing Paige Reynolds, Civic Engagement Manager. Hi, Paige.
Hello there. Hi.
And back from his convalescence, it's our dear friend, Dr. Lee Bynum. Hello, Dr. Lee Bynum. How are you doing? How are you feeling?
I am feeling so much better.
Oh, good. I'm so glad.
Thank you. Don't believe any of the hype. This alleged mild COVID is not cute.
No, absolutely not. Like we were talking about this last week, and I was like, anybody who says that this is mild is somebody who has never had to deal with a chronic illness. It's just ableism at its finest. But truly. I'm so happy that you are feeling better. And Paige, I know you weren't feeling great either. How are you?
I'm good. You know, I was one of the folks who was lucky to experience mild symptoms in my body. Not saying that this is mild at all. I feel extremely lucky and blessed that was the case. And then for some reason I decided, we just went through that. Let's go ahead and get our booster instead, and not even
booster.
Kind of forgetting about the part where the booster would give me some of the same symptoms as the COVID itself, and would result in a couple more days of discomfort when I just experienced that like a week or two ago. So, in retrospect, maybe I would have given him a little more time, but but I'm good now. It's all good now. I feel back to normal.
Because I can't remember. Did I tell you all on here about when I got my booster? Like the day before Halloween.
So. Did it take you out? It took me out.
Oh my goodness. I didn't really have any side effects in my body from the original 2 shots, just like a sore arm. But like with the booster, I was like, I don't think I've ever been that tired in my life. I could barely lift my head up out of bed. I was just super foggy, super just completely out of it. And of course we that night went and had dinner with some friends, and at one point my friend Miggy is sitting across the table from me, and she just starts snapping her fingers like, are you here? And I was just like, what? And I came back from wherever it was, it was wild. And I was just like, if that's anything like how my body would react to COVID, I'm just going to stay here in my basement bunker for the rest of my days until this is over, because I do not want that.
For real. I was like, I can't do anything more severe than I've already experienced. I would absolutely, even if I recovered, I would be a drama queen. I would be pissed. The good thing about the experience though is that like the clinic that I went to, y'all, it was so like friendly, and there was no wait. It was on, if you know anybody who like needs a vaccine or a booster shot, send them to Community Care Clinic on the north side of Minneapolis. I believe it's Black owned. When I was in there, it was like all people of color working there. I barely even realized the nurse had given me the shot because we were just kikiing and talking. And I was like, oh, we're done. Like, oh, she's putting the Band-Aid on. That means she already did it. Like,
oh, that's how you gotta do it though.
Yeah, it was so nice. And it was like nice because my like partner didn't like really want to go, and he was like, we neither of us really wanted to. We were like, oh, needles again, symptoms again, but they made it pleasant. So send people to a Community Care Clinic. Yeah, on the north side.
Well, and if I can find a link, I'll put it in the show notes.
Yeah, good idea, because we all may be due for booster number 2 if the word on the curb is right. And I my first one, my first regular shot, dose number one of Pfizer was fine. The second one, I got a little sick. The booster took me out, but still none of it was as bad as actually being sick. So like seeing like this, the way the stages progressed, and we had a bit of exposure in among my siblings and our spouses, despite the fact that everyone is double vaxxed and boosted. And there were 8 of us, and it was like 8 different stories. You know, there were some folks who weren't sick at all, and then other folks who got really sick. I never actually got a positive COVID diagnosis. I just got a suite of COVID symptoms for a week and a half, which I'm just going to go ahead and call COVID because, you know, evidence.
It sounds like to me like you got COVID.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm just.
But it was interesting because, like, in some instances, like one of my siblings would not get sick, but their spouse did. And like there was kind of no rhyme or reason to it. And as y'all know, my sisters are identical twins, and the fact that one of them got it and one of them didn't, and they spend an absurd amount of time together.
Wow.
So I feel like there's still a lot about how the transmission works that we don't really know. And, you know, diagnosing things is always sort of a precarious kind of guesswork sort of thing, but you know, seeing it in action and seeing how it looked, you know, was just absolutely crazy. I think the one relief though is that my mom, who's a cancer survivor, did not get sick at all. And that had been, yeah, seriously, that had been the thing we'd all been so worried about. And then, you know, everybody's calling her. She probably got 8 calls in a row, poor thing. And she's like, I'm completely fine. Y'all can stop calling. And all of you go to bed and drink some juice. So
my family was the same way. I kept checking in on them, like, okay, anyone else had symptoms? And they're just like, girl, it's just you. We're fine. Like,
go to bed. Leave it alone. Well, I mean, I guess it goes without saying at this point, but if you haven't already, I don't think you want this. So please go get your vaccine or your booster or both, because this Omicron is not something to play with.
Not at all. Omicron, Deltacron, any of the little alphabets out here. You don't want
Olive Fraternity Row. You don't want
Maria touching everybody.
And then you add that to the fact that it is literally 2 degrees outside. And it does kind of feel like, is this what the apocalypse is supposed to look like? Because if it's not, I don't know what is.
That would be mean, like the apocalypse in the middle of winter. That would be especially cruel. But you know, I guess with what we've all done to this planet, it'd be what we deserve.
Yeah. Mother Nature is through with us, and I can't imagine any other fact that seems more consistent with what I've been reading, like the tsunami warning that the West Coast had a few days ago after I think it was a volcano in Tonga. And it was just like, oh, do we have tsunamis in the United States? Well, I guess we do. And are we prepared for it? We are not. No. So it's just an interesting kind of a moment where we are all so distracted by Pete Davidson that we can't even like focus on the world coming apart.
Not
right
Pete Davidson. Yeah, Kanye's out here just wilding.
Isn't he?
I can't even keep up anymore.
I had to stop. I had to stop. I just had to stop because I couldn't. Anyway.
I definitely agree with the read when they say he's on the sick and shut-in list. And that just means it is what it is, and we're gonna pray for him.
We all keep him in our prayers.
Good Lord. And those babies.
Yeah, they have a lot of kids, don't they?
Like
I feel like I
four?
stopped counting after one got named Chicago, and I was like, okay, I'm not
I forgot. I
keeping
just
up
know
with
they're
these
incredibly
Kardashians.
cute.
They are very cute. They're very good looking children. Well, today marks the first of 3 episodes that we're going to do that focus on the composer Joseph Bologne, aka Chevalier de Saint-Georges, who was a Black composer from the 18th century. Is that correct? I should
That is
probably know.
correct.
Okay, good. Oh, thank God. And one of his pieces, The Anonymous Lover, we will be mounting it, opening at the Ordway this Saturday. Could not be more excited. The first time that Minnesota Opera is doing a piece by a Black composer, which is kind of crazy to say in 2022, but it's exciting nonetheless.
And we should probably add the tag on the main stage.
Yes, on the main stage.
Because we've
on the
had
main
some
stage.
educational and some, certainly the miniatures, but
Yes,
definitely the
yes,
main stage,
on
which
the
is
main
still
stage.
a huge deal for us.
Absolutely. And so we are going to have, over the course of the next 3 episodes, all sorts of guests, people who are involved with this production. We'll have some music, we'll have some historians on to talk about Joseph Bologne and his life, artists to come on and talk about what some of his music has meant to them and how they have been inspired by his legacy. It's going to be a Anonymous Lover, Joseph Bologne extravaganza. Extravaganza. Oh, by the way, we need to talk about metamorphosis, just by the way, because my position has changed and now I am 100% on your side, Lee.
Thank you.
You're welcome. I'm sorry, Guy Fieri.
I was about to say diners, drive-ins, and dives.
No,
like
with
that
a
was
hamburger
not the
phone.
tea. It was not.
And that wig, that was even worse than Guy Fieri's actual hair.
Oh no.
Like, I can't. But
and the flats, the flats on that main stage look. I'm like,
that was so upsetting.
Yeah.
I understand
flats
why.
Flat shoes?
As in flat shoe, not even a kitten heel, like an actual flat shoe.
In a drag, I have deduced by now that y'all are talking about Drag Race.
Yeah.
A flat shoe?
Yes.
Oh.
And
Is that what we're doing now?
I understand why he had to do it, because because of his costume, he had to crouch as he was walking down the runway, so it's not conducive to heels, but still.
Yeah, that's not how you win the crown.
And I feel like, think about like Katya or Detox or any of those queens would have figured out a way to put on a cute pair of heels.
And honestly, I think if it had been a different context, I think Michelle would have read him to filth over it, right? I think they were giving him some space, and he's clearly got some good ideas. He seems like he's newish to drag, but like, no God.
Wants
like
to be very respectful, but
yeah, and I appreciate that.
If I wanted to see a drag queen do a blues guitar performance for the talent show, if I wanted to see anyone do a blues perform, I would just go down to the local guitar center, wait a minute for somebody to start playing Stairway to Heaven on one of the sample guitars. No, I'm not doing. Anyway, I'm sorry. Joseph Bologne.
Joseph Bologne. Yes.
Just thinking about the 18th century and the Marie Antoinette of it all, just got me thinking about Maddie Morrison. But I think before we get to our first guests, I think we would be really remiss, we are recording this on Wednesday, January 19th, and we just got word that another one of our incredible elders, Andre Leon Talley, passed away this last night. And over the course of the past couple of weeks, we have just lost so many pillars of our community. And I just thought it would be just really important for us to just sort of take a moment and just sort of acknowledge all of these people that we've lost and the
Yeah.
amazing impact that they've had on us and our lives and the movement, towards racial equity and justice. And Andre Leon Talley, Sidney Poitier, Bell Hooks, local activist Mel Reeves here in Minneapolis, Lonnie Guinier, Ronnie Spector, Clyde Bellacore. It's just, am I missing anyone? Good gosh.
Yes, although not one of our ancestors, we still have to shout out Betty White. Like I think it goes, it's worth doing a couple of times a week, honestly. It's a huge influence in my comedic styling, so.
Yeah, and I just found myself especially crushed when we heard about Bell Hooks, because for me, she was just somebody. I don't even remember exactly when it was. It must have been like, at the, mid 2000s, early 2000s. Somehow I got my hands on a video of her. And just speaking just truth to power. And in my little sort of 20-year-old brain, I was just like, oh, like there's feminism. Oh, and then there's Black feminism. That's a complete. Oh, okay, cool. And she, just the way that she got these people together, but with so much love. I don't know. She was just somebody for me that was just such a huge inspiration, and just someone that I just learned so much from, and who I feel like just really just helped me in my development to just sort of become the person that I am today. But I don't know about you all.
Yeah, Andre Leon Talley has always been an interesting friend in the head for me. I like so much of what his public presentation was, right? And I think the way that he was able to make such a clear mark, not just on fashion, right, but in the ways that we think about clothes, right? How clothes show up in films and television, and certainly on the runway. And I, have always felt like a very close connection to him. I've never had the opportunity to meet or even see him in person, but there was something about the way that he was unabashedly himself, and he
absolutely
expressed that sartorially, right? And that's been a piece that's been really important to me. I wear what I want to, and it's an expression of how I understand myself and how I feel connected to aspects of my culture. I'm not afraid of a little bit of a color or a little piece of print. And I look to people like him as influences, and people who also say you can be a cisgender man and have whatever job you want to and still express yourself in terms of what it is that you're wearing, which I don't think is the messaging that we typically get, especially men of color, right?
Oh, absolutely. So, and just the way that he was able, he allowed himself to take up space.
Yeah.
As much space as he wanted, whenever he wanted.
Whenever he wanted.
And that was just just mind-blowing for just a little closeted little gay kid in Virginia to just be like, oh my God, I can go up to New York and I can just be just I can just walk down the street in a muumuu.
You certainly could.
Or a caftan, and I can do that. I'm allowed to do that. I'm allowed to just express myself the way that feels authentic to myself and my soul. And of course, I will just never forget the 2 seasons that he was a judge on Top Model.
Yes, that was
yeah.
Oh, I want to hang this in my salon.
I'm still processing I'm gonna be processing his passing for a minute. And
Yeah.
same thing with bell hooks. Like, I
Yeah.
was introduced to her as a freshman at Howard because my acting professor didn't officially put her book on the syllabus, but it highly, strongly encouraged us all to read it just for life, just to
Mm.
be good people out in the world, for us to read all about love. Um, and so I got it because he, was clearly so passionate about it, and it was like nothing short of life changing, and continues to be. Um, but Andre Leon Talley, I often like don't tell people that before, like one of my first arts loves was fashion. Like I wanted to be a fashion designer when I was little.
Hey.
I wanted to do that for a long time. And then I went like different, like to fashion buyer. And then like I went to obviously now I ended up in theater. But because of that, like he was such a and any interest I had, my parents wanted me to know about the Black people who came before me, who did it, and whose shoulders, we stand on. And so I learned about him really early on. And if there's like anything that I've gleaned that's made such an impact on me and how I dress now, there's, especially as Black folks, I want us to internalize that there's like nothing wrong with being grand just for the
Yes.
sake of it.
Yes.
Like, and don't let anybody dim that. Like, that is something like, he like really helped instill in me to have fun with like what I was wearing, to, embrace beauty. Why not make something beautiful? Like, come on, make your everyday life beautiful. Like for real. Like that is, I
And
think of him
special.
embodying
And
that.
special.
Yeah. Yeah, you don't have to wait to wear something special, or you don't have to wait because it's too much for the moment. Like yeah, that's one thing I remember. And I feel like I have to mention just like the cost of being in the spaces that he was in is like, especially what's hard to process right now, how a lot of folks like him, especially our Black queer elders, so many like don't see the recognition they deserve while they're living, or end up in like really lonely places, or having to experience a lot of loneliness. And he's talked about that. And so yeah, that is really like sitting with me, like how I want to lift up and be intentional about lifting up his legacy, the legacy of other Black queer ancestors like him, lifting up the people who are still here while they're here. Yeah, that's sitting heavy with me this morning.
Yeah. Well, the other one that has sort of been very present on my mind has been Ronnie Spector.
Oh my gosh.
I'm a
Yes.
huge fan of early and mid
Huge
60s pop.
fan. Me too.
Love girl groups. Always love girl groups. And the Ronettes were certainly one of my favorite. And, Ronnie Spector grew up in Washington Heights, where I lived for 7 years. And, I've just always been very drawn to her music, to her story.
Her voice
always was an interesting interview,
voice.
an amazing, one-of-a-kind voice. I know Zendaya is playing her in an upcoming biopic, and I'm really looking forward
that is perfect
to that.
casting.
Isn't
Yeah.
it though?
I'm here for that.
I didn't know that, but that is perfect.
So I am really looking forward to that. I also love musical biopics, but that might be a different story for a different topic. But yeah, that one hit me kind of hard. So I've been listening to a lot of her music and rewatching Sidney Poitier movies that I've seen 100,000 times already. So it's been we're not even 3 weeks in, y'all.
No.
And this is sort of where we are. And trying not to be of the mindset that this doesn't bode well for the rest of the year, but it is definitely not the start to 2022 that I was hoping for.
Well, may their memories always be a blessing and an inspiration, and just my undying gratitude to each one of them for all of the ways that they touched us and inspired us. It's just,
Mm-hmm.
it's just really
Ashe.
sad. Ashe.
Yeah.
Ashe.
Yeah.
But with that said, we do have a show to do, and it's actually going to be a pretty cool one, in my
I think
opinion,
so.
if I do
Oh,
say
yeah.
so myself. So stay tuned, because after the break, we are going to be joined by the director of Minnesota Opera's upcoming production of Joseph Bologne's The Anonymous Lover, Maria Todaro, as well as our brand new vice president of I couldn't remember his title for a second. Sorry, Joseph. our brand new vice president of artistic, Joseph Lee, also will join us. And then after that, I keep saying Black excellence because we had such a fun time with her. But we sit down with the costume designer of The Anonymous Lover, Ari Fulton, after that. So we've just got a whole smorgasbord of goodness and interesting people and beautiful art for you all. So stay tuned. We will be right back. All right, and we are back, everyone. Welcome back. This episode is the first of 3 episodes of our Anonymous Lover Joseph Bologne extravaganza. And we're super excited because, I mean, somebody correct me if I'm wrong, but this is the first time that Minnesota Opera is producing an opera by a Black composer, which is amazing. And it's also amazing that this is the first time that we are back in production at the Ordway, up on stage since March 2020. It's so exciting. But the Anonymous Lover is going to open this Saturday, and we are here joined by 2 guests who are here to talk about the production, get everyone hyped and excited for it. First, we have the director, Maria Todaro. She is not simply just a stage director. She is a versatile artist. She is an entrepreneur, a fight choreographer, stunt artist, writer, director. She has worked in places all around the country. She made her US stage directing debut in 2015 at the Westfield Symphony Orchestra. She has worked at Michigan Opera Theater, South Dakota Symphony Orchestra. Right now, she is the general director as well as the founder of the Phoenicia International Festival of Voice. And
mouthful, isn't it?
And one thing that I just found fascinating is you specialize in virtual reality directing. Is that?
Yeah, it's the thing that happened, with COVID. We had to find other avenues, and all of a sudden you met, you connecting with new partners in the world of opera. We had no choice. We had to expand, or and so we had to think out of the box. But this, well, I'm here for, and this project is way more exciting than seriously. This is like we creating history here, guys, and I couldn't be more thrilled to talk about it, and more grateful for Minnesota Opera to have reopened, taking this risk, taking that, taking this composer, taking me, bigger risk, and giving us the opportunity to tell the story of that, a little bit of that guy.
Well, we are super excited to have you here. We cannot. I think I speak for everyone when I say we can't wait to see the show. But also we have here coach, musician, and incredible brand new vice president of artistic here at Minnesota Opera, Mr. Joseph Lee. Welcome to what I would imagine is your first of many appearances on the score.
Well, I certainly hope so.
Well, let's get right into it. The Anonymous Lover. I think it is a piece that perhaps not a lot of people know about, but hopefully a lot more people will know about it after this weekend. But can you, Maria, just maybe tell us a little bit about the show? What is it about? And who is it by?
Yeah, so Absolutely, with great pleasure. This is The Anonymous Lover, L'Amant Anonyme, is a piece that is composed in the Galant styles, which is a very, very light, bubbly, joyous, it's a comedy, right? It's a comedy of 90 minutes that have ballet, that have all kinds of explosion of joy. And the script is, all the Frenchness and all the amorous secrecy and all the intrigues of people that it's very French, all that side. It's very court. It was very prized at the court of Marie Antoinette, and French Revolution when everything went. But this was like the bubbles, and so there's a lot of light, lots of joy in the play, which is very interesting for the composer. So many things to say. The composer himself, Joseph Bologne, is not, it's we can't judge the immensity and this like almost superhero like life that he had based on that 90 minutes ditty, because the 90 minutes, it's a bubble of joy, it's like a little, but his life, my gosh, was an opera itself, and the fact that the segregation he faced, and despite segregation, being a superstar of his time, a counselor of the king and the queen, meeting every single big personality of the 18th century, Casanova, Mozart. He influenced greatly Mozart, and not the opposite. Mozart was only 12 when he met Bologne, and have been in his music completely inspired by him. And the Chevalier de Saint-Georges, William Wilberforce, was someone that completely went behind Bologne, and actually this whole, how the superstardom started for. He was a superstar at this time, and it started with this man overachieving and being excellent at everything he touched, because he knew that this was the only way for him, because of the color of his skin, because of his heritage, and he was excellent at everything he touched. He led 2 regiments. I mean, I'm saying this almost with rage because it's incredible. We talk about Mozart and all this composition, but if Bologne had not been busy saving the world, maybe we would have had more work from him, like Mozart, who was partying, and nothing against Mozart. I love Mozart. But Mozart was composing and partying while this guy was building 2 regiments of black people, fighting 2 revolutions, working with abolitionists, composing, being a fencer, being a politician, being a defender of so many things, plus dealing with the segregation on him. Like, you couldn't marry at the time when you're a black man, you couldn't wear certain colors, you couldn't own properties, and despite all this, he flirted with everybody that had a brain and talent at the time, and despite the hardship, because when the French Revolution came, he was also tossed in jail, which was like, what? But so funny, because he was the friend of the Duke d'Orléans, who was one of the main defensor of equality at the time, and wanted, one of the initiator of the French Revolution, who's also guillotine, boom, died, one of the first to be eliminated. But Bologne, why would they put this man in jail, But because he flirted with aristocracy. This is how the people. So there's so much. And I know I'm digressing from the actual story of the opera we're presenting, but I would like the audience to understand that this is it's a little bubble of joy, but this is a pretext to actually talk about the composer, talk about his life, talk about his accomplishment. And unfortunately for us, he has composed 6 operas, and this is the only one we got, plus 1 piece from another one. And I like to, because of the lightness, and when you listen to his concerto violin, he was a virtuoso violin, and Joseph can talk more about all this, of course, but he was a virtuoso violin. So violinists of today, when they look at his music, they tremble and sweat. They're like, oh my gosh, it's difficult for the way the hand is traveling, ups and downs on the violin. It takes someone of his virtuosity level. His concerto, his violin music is divine and profound and very avant-garde for the time. This opera is really, once again, we're treating it the whole concept behind it is really to render an homage to Bologne. So we set it in an island that looks like Guadeloupe because it was his birthplace. So I hope the audience would love the colors and love the palm trees and love the wind and the curtain. And I'm still, if I had been able to, I would have had flying parrots on stage, but we can't. And Ari, our costume designer, would not be very happy, with the silk and all the beautiful material fabrics she's putting on stage. So no live parrot, but the audience will completely picture and imagine them. So it's kind of in a Caribbean island in the 18th century with a little bit of, liberty into the anachronism, just to connect us a little more deeply with the text from the 18th century. So we had to, while respecting completely the text, which is, by the way, written by a woman, Stéphanie Félicité de Genlis, another crazy thing, for the time, and another person also who had a very complex life and was a dear friend of Bologna at the time. So it's really fascinating that we have this opportunity not only to reopen the opera, as you said, to present the work of a Black composer, but it's not just any Black composer. This is a guy who has been in the shadow for many years unfairly and deserves to be celebrated at the highest level and at the highest level of many composers. So hopefully this is what our presentation will do, not only entertain the audience that comes and see all the fireworks that we're putting everywhere and the comical. It's really meant to be a joyful explosion, and in the cold of Minnesota, in February.
We need it.
Yeah, so hopefully this is gonna be, but also, and I hope, I pray that this is gonna also trigger many curiosities about who was Joseph Bologne, and many more of his celebration like this. I did all this in one breath, guys. That was a lot of talk.
And it was really fantastic, Maria. Thank you for that. And I was hoping we would find a way to sort of bring in that connection to William Wilberforce into the conversation, because he's primarily known in the United States as having given his name to one of our oldest historically Black universities. So I think people hearing that there's a connection there too will be of real interest. I have a question for you as well, Joseph. Could you say a little bit about why The Anonymous Lover and why now, and maybe the ways that this is giving us the opportunity to put into practice our statement of artistic belief in our diversity charter?
Right. So Minnesota Opera's stated vision is to sing every story. And as Maria pointed out, this is the first opera we're producing by a Black composer, and so we have not sung every story, have we? And so this is absolutely the story that we want to tell, and now it more than ever. One of the things that originally inspired me from listening to the early episodes of the score was this desire, this longing for artistic expressions of PBJ, pure Black joy. And while this, this is kind of, I feel like, a first meager offering to that plate that we so long for, and to offer it in this light spirit that Maria is talking about, that she's putting into her work with the artists, the humor, the humanity, the dancing, the singing, the virtuosity of the orchestra. This is all part of what we need to be telling right now. And another thing Maria mentioned was, about how COVID's gotten in our face over the past couple of years and gotten in the way of things that we're doing. I feel like this is us getting in COVID's face a little bit. Yeah. It's taking a lot of effort, but it's an effort well worth it, in my opinion.
Well, getting COVID's face, but make sure you have a mask on first.
And be vaccinated too.
Yes. And boosted.
Yeah.
And boosted. Yep.
Yeah, with some precautions, with some protections, right? Maria, I think you like alluded to this a bit in what you were saying. There was just so much richness. So I wonder if you could talk more about what how Bologne is viewed in France. Like, what is his legacy among the people and in French history? Like, is his name heard? Is it spoken everywhere? Like, is it commonly taught?
No, no, and that is like an absolute shock to me, because really, and again, one of the things that I'm super grateful is like Minnesota Opera taught me about my own French history by bringing this project in front of me. That's ridiculous. I discovered then that yes, 2 books have been written about him, but it's obscurely known, it's not it's not common knowledge that we had this Black composer, and that is one of the things that I hope to repair. And I'm gonna go on a real passionate quest here. I don't want to use the word crusade because that's like what, but I'm that's a little bit of a desire of mine to go back to my country and say hello. Riches here, celebration. And he has a street in Paris where there's a plate with his name, so it's not completely, and he's quoted, I mean, he's quoted by people in passing, and he's quoted a little bit by everybody important because, again, he was he was the only one that has that status, a man of color, that status at the court of Versailles. So he was remarked, he was noted. But no, I mean, we have not, to answer your question, no, there's not enough. There's really not enough. But you'll see in the show, I don't want to give all the secrets to our audience because you gotta come and you gotta have fun and see all the little bubbles that we put for you. But there's gonna be quoted. Quoted French quotes of John Adams, for instance, is quoting. There's a wonderful quote by John Adams about Bologne that you'll read it. Come to the show, you'll read it. And there's all kinds of quotes also from very famous people. But I'm I'm disappointed that people don't know about him. This is why for the first time, a lot of ideas came when you read the play. You could set it in, it's a universal play, so the opera itself, right? You could set it in any time. This is one motivation also to respect the time period of the composer and setting it in his birthplace, eluded birthplace. And it was important. That's part of telling the story of Bologne. That's part of the illustration of his life. Even if the opera does not talk about something directly connected to his life. There's a lot of elements, like the fencing. There's no reason to have a fight in this fantastic love play, but we put a little bit of fencing just to make a wink at the fact that his career and notoriety started with this. You were talking about Wilberforce earlier. We were talking about this, and that started. This entire notoriety started with the fencing and started with, the abolitionists very quickly understood they had like someone that could be the spokesperson, and they could be all behind him. So, and he was only 17 when he defeated one of the greatest. Alex Picard was the French guy, the superstar of fencing of the time in France, who called him. I don't want to say the word here, but it's not a good word, and it was offensive to Bologne. So Bologne say, you and me, we're fighting. and he won. Bologne, who worked so hard at everything he did. This is also why it's so important to be told for me, is that, it's inspiring. He worked, he got. you know, and it's not that we work with God, that's not the formula, of course, but this is a success story despite everything, the stuff this man has touched in his living and the influence he had on his living, you know, while he was with us. And now we you know, finally giving him recognition, but he has changed lives during his own life, and so that has to be voiced a lot for me, because I think we do need this encouragement on a daily basis, and specifically in certain communities, as you defend them, and you know that. I like to celebrate the positive, you know, instead of dwelling in the thing that we know didn't work. I like that this life is one that really worked, you know, and celebrate that life.
Can I pose a question to the group, if you will? One of the things that Maria said about, just kind of casually in passing, when she was talking about all the things that Bologne did, leading regiments, being an expert at everything he did, she said something like, it fills me with rage just thinking about it. And I thought, yes, you know, we all have this kind of like, oh my gosh, we know people in our lives who are good at everything. Like, it makes us so upset. But I also wonder on another level, imagining somebody that good at what they were doing, as many people of this kind are, that they encounter resistance because of that. They encounter insecure colleagues, insecure people around them who are threatened by somebody like Bologne, who would have been so much better at what he did than most of the people, almost all the people around him, probably. So I wanted to know, you know, what you all thought of that, of being a possibility. This is completely just speculation on my end. I expect from what I have read that this is probably true. But what do you all think?
You know, there is a statement that many folks of color grow up hearing around, if you want to get half as much as your white counterparts, you have to be twice as good, right? And I think that there is something very, very real about that. And as, you know, democratizing as the arts can be, I think it's something that shows up very frequently. And I'll just say really briefly, 2 nights ago, my husband and I were watching The Tragedy of Macbeth, starring Denzel Washington, right? And among other reactions to it, we were both kind of blown away at being reminded how good Denzel Washington is and how extraordinary his range of skill is relative to kind of every other living male who is acting at the moment. And, you know, I think this kind of connects, right? You know, whether you're thinking of someone like Maya Angelou recently on The Quarter, the number of things that she excelled at in her life beyond poetry, dancing, singing, you know, acting, all of that. And I think that it's almost common among Black artists to have those kinds of profiles and still never attain what your white counterparts do. And I think that's part of what we have to counteract in this space. But Paige and Rocky, I'd love to hear your perspectives too.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of as Lee said about that, you know, phrase that we're all taught, you know, growing up, that, you know, you have to get half as much, you have to be twice as good. And I mean, I think along with that, I was also just trained with the knowledge that there will be eyes on you that are that are jealous, or who, whether they admit it or not, have internalized that you're supposed to be lesser than. You know, they've internalized that as a brown-skinned person, like, wait, you're not supposed to shine like that. Like, you're not supposed to be smarter than me, or you're not supposed to make me feel like I'm not as smart as you or not as brilliant as you. And people act out in all kinds of ways when they have, you know, that feeling. And yeah, I was just kind of taught that that was also a fact of the matter. So I'm absolutely sure that the Chevalier faced that. I'm just sure of it. And it's unfortunate, but I I think the more we can call attention to it as well, like those who want to rectify it also can see when that's happening in a space, and when that's been part of somebody's even, you know, retroactively, like now, even when that's been part of the legacy, and, you know, why we're not hearing of this person, because that's the kind of attitude that prevails, and hopefully we can disrupt it now when it's happening in the present.
Yeah, I was having a conversation once with someone a few years ago, and I was saying that, like, it's really interesting because, you know, as, you know, a Black person, a Black artist especially, you know, you can go into spaces, you can be smart, you can be capable, you can be hot, you can be funny, you can be cool, but it's very rare that you can be in a space where you can be all of those things at once. And so it's just this very sort of careful calculus that you're doing in your head. Like, well, which parts of myself do I need to sort of dim in order to make this person feel comfortable, or in order to sort of get myself to the place where I want to be? And it's just so heartening to hear this story of this man who just kind of went into these spaces and just went like, I'm going to be me. And I'm gonna do whatever the F I want to do, and y'all are gonna deal with it, and y'all are just gonna be mad. Because I think I've told this story before on the podcast, but having a teacher who wanted to fail me because I, you know, kind of stood up for myself and stood up for, you know, what I believed in his class, and he did not like that, and so he was trying to give me, you know, an F, and so I just went, you know what, I'm just gonna shine even brighter so that you have no choice but to give me, you know, an A or a passing grade or whatever. And so it's just really heartening that we are putting this piece on the stage, and we're highlighting this man and his life and his incredible accomplishments. And I just hope that, you know, especially folks of color, especially Black folks who come to see this show, get to see his work and get to read about his life and get to listen to our show for the next couple of weeks, hopefully, you know, and continue to get inspired, because, you know, that's really what great art does, is, you know, allows everyone to sort of inspire and be inspired and dream.
Now, you guys have given us a great opportunity to create food for thoughts and create that healing inspiration that we will give to the audience, hopefully, and to the artist also. It's so, I mean, just a little pitch for the audience and the people that will listen to us. This is really history that we're making. We're adding 2 pieces of music that were not part of the score. There's been little tweaks of motivation of the characters. So this piece not only has rarely been heard in the history of the piece itself, but now it's never been heard the way it will be presented here, you know. So this is making history altogether too, as we honoring the originator of that music. I'm so, I don't like to say I'm humble and all that stuff, but I really mean it. I'm really humbled by this particular project, you know. It is a privilege to be serving a guy like Bologne. And yeah, it's special. I think all the actors, the wonderful performers we have, and the maestro Joseph, and I think everybody, and the choreographer, the fantastic choreographer we have. So because it's, you know, 18th century music, but we're setting in the Caribbean, oh, the audience is gonna travel with us. We're gonna have a wonderful travel in the island because we have a Jenan Saint-Just. She's an Haitian choreographer.
Yes.
Do you know her?
She is amazing.
She's amazing.
I am such a fan. I'm such a fan.
God. She's amazing, and I adore. It's like we knew each other forever. And she's and Jennifer Mako. So we have 2 choreographers that are helping me setting a very interesting mix of the 18th century traditional, you know, dance and the wah of the and this is all I'm going to say, but there's a lot of wah in there, a lot of it. So it's fun to learn those things also, you know. Yeah.
One thing that I was just curious about, you know, since we're talking about, you know, sort of innovation and collaboration, Obviously we are living through a global pandemic right now. And this is the first, like I said at the beginning, the first opera that we are mounting on the stage in the Ordway for the first time since, March, February 2020. So I'm just curious, you know, what is different now 2 years later when it comes to producing an opera for the stage? What have you found that is that's new, that's crazy, and how do you feel like it's all going? I guess masks, exactly.
Yeah, that's a little different
Yeah.
because half of the expression of the artist. So it would be, well, if they're making it work with just this, imagine when we're gonna have all that. So it's
Mm-hmm.
gotta be bonus for me. So I'm happy. It cannot be, yeah, contradictory. So that's different. Joseph, what do you think?
I think the expectations are the biggest difference of making art in a or current pandemic world. Expectations of what is possible, both expanded and not. The mask thing that you bring up, Maria, is huge. I cannot imagine doing this as a singer. Honestly, the way that I try to describe this to other people, especially other pianists who, we as coaches, we use our ears all the time. We're supposed to be the pickiest of the picky in terms of what we hear from a singer. But I describe this as, well, what if you had to play rehearsals for 3 weeks, 4 weeks, but wearing mittens or wearing gloves? How would you
That's a good
feel
one.
about, maybe you could manage that for a week, but after a week, wouldn't it start to kind of pull on your soul a little bit, not being able to bring the full force of what you could do to bear? And I think that the expectations that we have of our artists, and in particular singers, are just so high. And I would just like to give them a shout out for being as
Good sports.
courageous and good sports, and
Very
for
much.
putting the amount of love and effort into this that they are. And at the soonest point that we can stop making this demand of them, out with it, because it's a lot.
But you're so right, Joseph. I mean, everybody has been such an incredible sport at rehearsal, and so happy again, and to serve the piece, and to be on stage, and to work, and to. Oh. So, what's different? I think COVID has also taught us all that nothing is really can be taken for granted, and so there is a gratitude in rehearsal, in the room. There's a general sense of gratitude and appreciation. There was a common, so blasé, gotta go to rehearsal, like I do that all the time. But every single artist in the heart is, its place is on stage and in a rehearsal, and we love what we're doing, and we would, our identity is so intertwined with what we do that it was a mask also to not show so much that it matters. That blasé attitude, it's a mask, and we all know that behind the mask there's so much love and so much desire to do well. And so I think the mask has fallen a tiny not that, you know what I'm talking about, mask fallen, right?
not the N95.
The masks have fallen, not those masks, but so there's a little bit more of transparency and vulnerability. Also, the artists are a little more, and we had conversation around the table about insecurities and about the muscle, the rehearsal muscle not being practiced a little bit. So, and that was at one of the 2 weeks in the process, we sat with the actors, the singers, and we discussed the fact that it's okay to feel a little weird. It's totally okay to feel weird. I feel weird too. We all feel weird. So let's just embrace it and make the best out of it. So those conversations have been very rare in the past. To just say, hey, we human beings that are trying our best right now, and with all the skills that we work so hard to acquire, So that has been positive, I would say.
Well, we could not be more excited to see this piece when it opens up on Saturday. Everyone, please go to mnopera.org, call the box office, get your tickets, because this is one that you are not going to want to miss. And Maria and Joseph, we are honored. Thank you so much for joining us today. And we hope to see you both again in the future. And everyone else, stay tuned. We will be right back with costume designer extraordinaire and Black excellence, Ari Fulton. We'll be right back. All right, and we are back. Continuing our anonymous lover palooza. I guess I don't know what we're calling this.
I like palooza.
Palooza's good. It's good suffix. It's one of my favorites. And Lee actually had a quick prior commitment, so he had to run out for a few minutes. But that just means that we are joined by our favorite guest host, Mr. Frankie Charles. Welcome back to the show. Hi, Frankie. How are you doing today?
Good, great. It's a wonderful, wonderful day in Minneapolis.
Isn't it? Just snowy and cold, January. Oh my God.
So pleasant.
So pleasant. But you know what? That was sarcasm for any of the listeners who didn't pick up on that. But I'm not being sarcastic about is how happy we are to have our incredible guest today. Another wonderful example of Black excellence here on The Score. We're so excited to have Ari Fulton here. She is a New York-based costume designer who has built a diverse career creating characters for stage and film. Ms. Fulton is an alum of the theater school at DePaul University, as well as the Tisch School of the Arts, NYU, for those of you who don't know. Film credits include Nigerian Prince, Cupids, the Disney Talent Showcase, and some recent theater design credits include A Wonderful World, the Louis Armstrong musical at Miami New Drama, a high school play at the Alley Theater, Confederates, written by Dominique Morisseau at the Signature Theater, and Off-Broadway, directed by Robert O'Hara. She previously served as the interim head of costume design at the University of Connecticut and is currently on the faculty at Queensborough Community College. But we are super excited to have her here because she designed all of the costumes for our upcoming production of The Anonymous Lover. And we couldn't be more excited to talk to her about her process, some of those designs, the work, why she's excited to be a part of this project. So welcome, Ari. We're so excited to have you on The Score.
Thank you for having me. I'm excited to be here. I'm a fan of you guys. I've been listening to your podcast, and it's been getting me through the fall. So I'm very excited to be here.
Oh my gosh, that's so nice. It's always just like so weird. Like, you know, sometimes you're sitting here and you're sort of like putting things out into the world. And so to hear that people are actually listening to it, it's just kind of exciting. But, you know, first question, let's get right into it. The Anonymous Lover, so exciting. The first opera by a Black composer here on the Minnesota Opera stage, which feels wild to say, but it's exciting that it's happening. And so can you just tell us about this project, your involvement, how you got involved, and just about some of the costumes and what your inspiration was?
Yeah, so I got involved this summer when the set designer actually contacted me, Stephen Borofsky. We actually went to grad school together, and he said, you know, let's do a pitch for Minnesota Opera. And, you know, when you first hear about it, you're like, okay, whatever. But then I started doing some research on the actual composer, Joseph Bologne, and instantly I was hooked. I just felt like his story spoke to me. Just sort of being stuck between two worlds, being stuck between two worlds, constantly having to prove yourself, constantly being met with doubts, and then also just trying to showcase your artistry and your talent. That's the first thing that caught my attention. And then of course it's the 18th century, the 18th century has always been like, the period that I've most wanted to design, and especially the 18th century with Black people, or brown people in general. I'm an art lover. I'm an art lover. I've also seen through my research that oftentimes brown people have not been showcased in art history or highlighted in art history, especially during this time period. It's always in the view of subjugation or, in the backdrops. And I found this to be an opportunity for me to showcase the humanity of, Black and brown people during this period.
Yes, same. You speaking my language right now. I grew up in a house of Black girls who loved like period films and things like that. And we love to look at the costumes. And that's part of why I was so excited, just like seeing what you shared with Minnesota Opera staff of your designs for the production. It just like increased my excitement tenfold. And I wonder, like, what has been different working in costume design for opera versus, maybe some of the other work you've done, which I heard some really cool stuff in there. I love Dominique Morisseau and Robert O'Hara, so it's cool you got to work on their work. But yeah, what's been unique about opera? I wonder.
What has been unique about opera? I want to say what's really unique is, so far on this production, now this is my first opera, so I don't know how it will go after this project. I also think the Minnesota Opera is a unique place, it seems like, where they allow the artists to lead and they kind of step out of the way. So I found that to be very unique, where our process on the project, me, the director, the set designer, we were allowed to just be creative. So that was different. I think the thing that was a little jarring was the hierarchy. It's slightly different than stage or film. Learning that, because I feel like no matter what discipline you work in, you have to figure out how to navigate that. So, learning that. And also, I want to say, I'm not a musical person. I'm a very visual person. So learning, the composer and the music conductor, all of these different elements of opera has been a real challenge, but also interesting to learn how to navigate.
It reminds me of a conversation we were having with Trevor Bowen a couple of months ago, and he was talking about a very similar thing, like, why is it that we call it the libretto when we can just call it the script? There's just this kind of barrier to entry with all of the language that people have to learn, and it's just it can be a little gatekeepery at times, but
it is. And I have reservations about doing this because, everyone on the creative team speaks multiple languages. I only speak one. And, like anything when it comes to high art, and I'm saying it in quotation marks, there's this idea of elitism and, this idea where, I'm from Chicago, I'm not very fancy or proper in that regard. I'm very laid back. So to enter that world is very, it's very scary because you don't know how you're going to come across, and you don't want to be viewed as, ignorant or not knowing what you're talking about. But you also want to learn, many times I've asked Maria, the director, please send me readings on opera. I want, because in order to break the mold, you have to know what the mold is. In order to innovate, you have to know what the rules are to figure out how to break something intentionally, and innovate on a new idea. So for months, I've just been, reading and getting myself familiarized with the structure of opera and classical music in order to break the mold.
Wow. As someone else who's from Chicago, I can definitely,
Oh, Frankie, you from Chi-Town? Where are you from?
So I did my 4 years at DePaul, but I'm technically from a northern suburb.
Go Blue Demons.
Yeah. And it's wild because being at the theater school, I never thought I'd be in opera. Did you ever think you'd be in opera?
I mean, I hope to, because it's like, costume design on a grand level, but
oh yeah,
I knew it was a very steep mountain to climb.
Yeah, well, welcome.
Yeah.
You're in it now.
Yeah.
Was there anything from your time in school, like a lesson or something that you're bringing into this production? Like, I really do enjoy your sentiment about learning about the new art, and I also enjoyed your quotations around high art. I don't think we necessarily need to call it high art. It's all just art. Yeah. Is there anything that you're bringing to this production from your past? Anything that's inspired you from the past that you're bringing into this design of yours for Anonymous Lover?
Oh, for sure. I think that, growing up in Chicago, I didn't grow up in the suburbs. I grew up in the city. I went to school in the city, K through undergrad. So, I was around, many different types of people, many different gender expressions, many different, ethnic backgrounds from an early age. So I always knew like the value of different cultures and the value of like mixing. I know we hate to use the word high art, but for the lack of better word, high art or acceptable art with, street art. Many of my friends back home are, in hip hop. I have like my closest girlfriends are break dancers, and I grew up in like, break dancing, hip hop, cypher circles. And for me, I found, just as much value in that as, going to the Chicago Symphony Orchestra or gonna go see a show at the Goodman. The one difference is, and I hate to say this, I thought much of that stuff was lame, much of like what we think of as high art as being lame, because I'm like, I don't see myself here. Why is it so rigid? What happens if you mix it with this? So that's what I always try to bring to every project, is this element of coolness. I know that sounds a little pretentious of me, but yeah, people or things that go down in history is not the status quo. It's the people and the things that are innovating to create something new. It's the mixing. You think about any of your favorite artists, it's because they actually had something different to say. They weren't following the rules. They were doing something new. So whenever I, sit down to design a new production, yes, I bring a sense of dramaturgy, and we have to support the story, but I always think about what can I contribute that's new to the telling of this story. So that's what I bring.
Yeah.
Yeah, opera with swag. Swaggy opera.
Yes. Opera. Can we please get rid of the lame, rigidness? Like, I go to the Met a lot. I love going to go see, opera at the Met in New York. I also think that they're really trying. They're doing new works, and they're trying to innovate as best they can. But when you enter that space, any opera house, you feel the grandeur of the space, number one. You feel the Europeanness of the space, number two. And if you're a brown person, automatically you're confronted with, this building was not made for me. Like, this was not made for my rhythm. It was not made for my aesthetic. Many operas is 50 shades of beige, and you're like, why is this on stage? Nobody wants to look at beige. I hate the color beige. I really
Okay, no neutrals. Noted.
Exactly. I actually had an assistant say, wow, you really don't like neutrals. And I was like, no, I don't.
Oh.
I used to work in interior design, and the head of the firm that I worked for, neutrals everywhere, tone on tone everywhere. And it just got so boring.
Yeah, but also I think the idea of neutrals means refined and dignified and but pattern and color can also be refined and dignified. And I think it's harder to do it with color than it is with beige, because 50 shades of beige will always match, but trying to figure out different color combinations and patterns is way more sophisticated.
Absolutely. And speaking of no new neutrals, Anonymous Lover takes place in the 18th century in the Caribbean. And so your designs are so colorful, so exciting, so vibrant. And so I think the costume renderings are up on our website, mnopera.org. But I was wondering if you could tell the audience just a little bit more about these designs and what you were inspired by, and just sort of some of the research that you did to come up with them.
Yeah, I feel like I've been, moving, or my work up until this point has led me to here, just because I've worked so much in the diaspora. I worked in West Africa. When I was at DePaul, I actually did a study abroad in Ghana, where I was researching traditional storytelling and textiles, just because I've been an artist since I was in diapers. I went to art school in high school, went to Chicago Academy for the Arts. And then I went to, undergrad and grad school for art. I studied at the Art Institute. So I have been training in Western art since I was, in diapers. And it came a point when I was at DePaul and I looked around and I was like, oh my God, this is the same exact art history class that I got in high school, and in middle school. I need to go figure out a different aesthetic. So I went to West Africa and started, learning about traditional storytelling and traditional textiles. So that's the thing that really got me to this point. So it wasn't really hard, because there's a lot of paintings from this period of Black and brown people, particularly in the Caribbean. I don't think it's really highlighted in art history class, but it is there if you're looking for it. And so I had been researching these, different paintings and artists, but I didn't know what to do with it. And all of a sudden, this project came up and I was like, this is perfect. Also, I wanted to put my headspace in Bologne, Joseph Bologne, and figure out a way how to honor him. If he was around in 2022, how would he want this production to be, seen? so I thought, me and the creative team, we put our heads together, and it was perfect that we set it in the Caribbean. It was the thing that was going to honor Bologne the most. So that's how we stumbled upon this. Also, there was a lot of exciting opportunities because, Black women and Black people in particular, even though, they're dressing in a European style, they're adding their own flavor. In this production, there's a lot of head wraps worn by the women. And at first, I had already, known this from my research, but, these head wraps are very odd to a modern eye. It's like, it's like this huge thing on top of a woman's head. What is this about? But if you know the legacy and the history of these head wraps, you see the oppression that it was supposed to initially be, because it was supposed to cover the beauty of a Black woman's hair. But then Black women didn't just tie a radio scarf around their head. They made it into fashion. It became something that was coveted by European women, because all of a sudden, something that was supposed to subjugate a Black woman all of a sudden became this instrument of fashion to shape the culture. And that's why you see a lot of white European women during this time period being painted with different head wraps, is because they're trying to emulate the fashion that's happening in the Caribbean. So that was a huge inspiration, the Caribbean in general. And it just brings this, this is a love story, it brings the heat and the warmth and the colors and the vibrancy of the Caribbean really lends itself to the storytelling.
Yeah, I love that. I love that. I'm also thinking about about this production, about all you've had to say about like where you're coming from and your point of view, and wanting to mix it up and not be, stale, and, some of the maybe freedom that you've had in this production where you may not have in others, or, the artistic liberties you've been able to take. I wonder what people in our position, not just at opera houses, but at art institutions in general, what can we do to be more supportive of artists like you, of costume designers, even if it's specifically costume designers of color in opera, is as broad or as narrow as you want. What can we do to make sure y'all are having more positive experiences, and that we can see, more of this work that's reflecting everybody, not just European culture and history?
Yeah, I mean, first I would just want to highlight that my time at Minnesota Opera has been very pleasant. Just being given the freedom to create. The shop has been so generous with me. They've really just been excited and have gone down this road with me, and just trusted me. So I think the biggest thing that companies like this can do is to give opportunity, number one, but then once that opportunity is given, is to step out of the way and trust that the creatives are going to create something brilliant. Because I will tell you, there's very few brown people as creative department heads or in places of power. So if that brown or Black person has gotten there, that means they are not about to mess up the opportunity that they're given, because the different roadblocks to get there has prepared them for that moment. So once they're there, the best thing a company or an institution can do is step out of the way and let them shine, because it's going to be a good return on your investment. You think about, I'm sure you guys know this, nothing was handed to you. You had to work for it. You had to work twice as hard for it.
Who you telling?
You had to show up for it. You had to dot all your I's and cross all your T's to get to where you are. So there's no way, it's a very slim margin that you're gonna mess up this opportunity. So the best thing a company can do is invest in a Black or brown person's idea, I think, any day.
Period.
I mean, period. Point blank, period. Thank you.
I think of like how I got to here. Like, my mom, I came from a single parent household. My mom was a waitress. I've been in private school since kindergarten, and it wasn't because she could afford to put me there. It's because I had scholarship and I had to work to keep the scholarship. So, to be working to keep your scholarship from kindergarten, that's a different type of hustle.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm sure many Black and brown people have a similar story.
I sure do.
I know all of us. All of us.
And not even talking about the other things you have to do, like community service and just think about all of the hoops you had to jump through to get here. Like there's no way you're gonna just squander something.
Well, one more question that I did have for you is just in terms of, the last, 2 years have just been so insane, to say the least, between, the pandemic, the global movement for racial justice. And so I'm just curious, in your work, have there been any, unique opportunities or challenges that you have found as an artist of color, over the past couple of years in your work?
Yeah, the pandemic really hit me psychologically. Just seeing what happened on repeat to George Floyd, that really, I even get a little emotional thinking about it.
Yeah.
Because you think about how can the police officer not even see his humanity? So.
Oh, it's all right.
Sorry. I don't even know why I'm crying.
Because you're a human.
Right.
I don't even know where this is coming from. Oh my God. Okay. Yeah, so just having to live that over constantly, it's so hard to forgive and move on, constantly having to put yourself back together after seeing something like that was really tough. It really was. It was tough. My partner is a Black man. I have, Black men in my family. And it was very tough to have to constantly not just put yourself back together, but put your community back together. Where's this coming from? Oh my God, where's this coming from? I don't even know where this is coming. You hit a nerve this morning.
It's okay. We all understand. We all understand. We really do.
Yeah, so
I get it.
That was really tough to constantly have to put yourself back together and then turn around and make something. And make something honestly, and because it takes a lot of work to make something. You give a lot of yourself when you make something. So it was a long time for me before I could sit down and just paint or be creative. I spent a lot of time under the covers, crying, just because it was hard for me to believe in America. It was hard for me to just create something when you see so much injustice and so much brutality towards your community. So that was the hardest point. I will say the thing that really kept me going were my students. Because it was just so nice to put that creative energy into fostering their growth. It made me feel like I was of service to something bigger, and that in a small way I was sort of making a difference. I know that sounds kind of cliche or corny or whatever.
That sounds beautiful.
Yeah, but it just felt like that was the way. So I didn't create for a very long time, and I just focused on, fostering the growth of young creatives, and I found that to be extremely rewarding. And also just deprogramming them, because they had a lot of outdated ideas of what was considered good art, high art, valued art. So that also took a lot of work to sort of deprogram them and be like, have you thought about this? And, how does this story, how is it parallel to what's going on right now? And how do we make it relevant and current? So that's sort of how I got through the pandemic.
Wow.
Yeah. That is so real, from the tears, which I definitely identify with.
I've been there myself
So
more than
much
once.
to the teaching. Like, if nobody said it, let me say it. Like, teachers like you in hard times have, like, especially in the arts, helped me keep it together. So what you're doing is definitely so important. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Well, Ari, do you have any projects coming up other than Anonymous Lover that you're excited about?
Yeah, some of them you've already highlighted. I'm doing the new Dominique Morrissey show at the Signature in New York. What else am I doing? That is the big thing and then the Alley production. And so far, that's the thing those are the two projects that are sort of set in stone. But yeah, that's what I'm doing this spring.
Awesome.
Nice. Well, Ari, I'm looking at the clock. I'm sorry I made you cry.
No, it's okay. It's okay. I'm a big crybaby. I cry at the drop of a dime, so.
Well, we were so blessed, so happy to have you here with us. And everyone out there, please, if you are in the Twin Cities area, go get your tickets for Anonymous Lover so you can see Ari's fantastic designs. Go visit mnopera.org. So, you can see some of the beautiful renderings of what you're going to be seeing up on stage. And Ari, do you have any like a website or social media where, folks can follow you?
Yes, at me at Ari Fulton Designs on Instagram. I just basically have an Instagram. That's the only thing I can handle. And then arifultondesigns.com. So that's where you can find me.
All right, arifultondesigns.com. Everybody go check it out. And we will be right back with the rest of the show. Thank you so much, Ari, for being here.
Thank you.
And we are back. I hope you all enjoyed Ari and Maria and Joseph. But as usual, we want to take you out, send you off into this beautiful week with a quick, pure Black joy. So, Paige, a 1, a 2, a 1, 2, 3, 4.
Peanut butter jelly time, peanut butter jelly time, peanut butter jelly time, peanut butter jelly, peanut butter jelly, peanut butter jelly.
Oh, it's my favorite part.
I first heard that on The Proud Family, and apparently that's coming back.
It is with the original cast intact somehow.
Amazing.
I'm super excited about that.
I'm there.
No, that's dope. Well, who wants to go first?
I'll share because mine is nice and short. The February 2022 issue of British Vogue features this absolutely extraordinary cover with 9 African models right on the front, all dressed in black, dark complexion, beautiful sisters. And it just was a moment when I saw it. It immediately caught my eye. I was so excited to see this because this is not the Vogue of, memory that I have, right? And I know that the fashion industry takes a huge cue from what is represented in its pages. And it was really great to see this group of models honored, looking extraordinary, and reminding people that we are here, that we've always been a part of fashion, that our perspectives and our voices matter, and that we also look like that, right? So if you haven't seen it, check it out. I was actually inspired to write about it on social media, which is not usually a thing I do. I usually try to stay in my own lane and not talk about fashion, but I was really, really struck by the image. And I think a lot of other people, I can only imagine kids growing up seeing that, seeing themselves represented in that way. It'll be a little easier for some kids out there because they have taken this opportunity, and representation really, really matters. So
Absolutely. And
thank you,
it
British
is
Vogue.
it is such a beautiful image. And plus, like, just that they're all wearing black, they are all dark skin. And I don't think we've had the colorism conversation yet in depth here on the podcast, but that's something that we, the three of us, have talked about frequently. But to see like all of these beautiful dark skinned people just moisturized to the gods, like just looking just so regal and fabulous. It stopped me in my tracks. It really did.
And I think I probably should also acknowledge Edward Enninful, who is the editor-in-chief of British Vogue. He is Ghanaian, and I think that his leadership, right, is written all over that cover. And I'm just really, really taken by all of it. So
it was just incredible. Like, and I also can't wait to like just see more of that just embedded throughout fashion in general. Because just like, look, see what happens. See the beautiful images we got. I also want to shout out the photographer. His name is Raphael Pavarotti. If you look up his other work, he just features a lot of really like deeply dark skinned models in just really gorgeous photos, and like different creative ways too. Like it's and just like really highlighting their skin, like not not exoticizing, but also like not ignoring it and acting like it doesn't matter,
right.
I think that's beautiful, to have more people seeing us in that way. So yeah, shout out to him.
Absolutely. I wonder if he's any relation to Luciano.
I was wondering that too. If he's one of our people wants to swing by the podcast.
He does appear to be of color. Yes. I do not know how he identifies, but
well, Paige, what's your pure black joy?
Mine is the new ABC comedy, Abbott Elementary.
Yeah.
Abbott Elementary is a gem, and I am so glad it is now in my life. First of all, a few reasons why I love it. One, the creator, Quinta Brunson, I have watched her go from like a funny internet meme, a funny internet video. It's like her joking about like being a girl who's never like dated a man with money before, and it's things like they're on a date at the theater and he orders like a large popcorn and a large drink and a candy bar, and he's like, "Oh, you got money." You got money. And she's like telling her friends, "Girl, he got money. Girl, no, he got money for real." And like that just blew up all over the internet. And like from then she's had other opportunities to write and making her own memes and stuff. And so I'm just so happy to see her have this opportunity to not only star in the show, she stars in the show and writes it. Yes. She wrote it. She came up with the concept and everything. So yay, Black excellence. Shout out to Quinta.
Yes, Miss Quinta. I've also enjoyed her memeing. She's a funny woman.
I remember when she was at BuzzFeed and she did all the BuzzFeed videos and they were always super funny. Yeah.
Exactly. I also love the show because it's one of those workplace documentary kind of thing, kind of style things like The Office or Parks and Rec, but like a lot blacker. And so that's just right up my alley. And then the third thing that I just really love is the comedy with the truth. And, you know, it speaks a lot to the disinvestment in education in our country and like what educators and school administrators and students and parents are going through. Especially in schools with lots of kids of color. Yeah, so I just appreciate that she's speaking the truth to that, but in a funny, humorous way. Like I've truly enjoyed watching it, and I hope there's many more seasons to come.
And
I'm sure there will be.
Am I correct that great Jamaican American actress Cheryl Lee Ralph is also in the cast?
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yes. I'm Cheryl Lee Ralph stan. If she's doing a thing, then I'm watching that thing. So I will certainly be tuning into this because it sounds pretty awesome.
It's incredible. Her character is so funny and also just true to like that elder, like Black woman on your job who you look up to and has kind of seen it all. And knows the game. So.
Well, I meant to watch it last night because we were talking about this yesterday, and I went to Hulu, and then I'm currently in the middle of a Real Housewives of Atlanta rewatch. So I got caught up in that, which I don't know. I guess that's my pure Black joy. But I'm on the season with Kim Fields.
Oh yeah, that was a wild one. That was a really wild one.
And I forgot how sort of prim and proper she was. And how
she was having none of it.
And how mean Kenya was. Like Kenya is so mean. My God. But I guess shout out to Kim Fields. I hope she's doing better.
Yeah, I mean, I can't imagine that experience was she looked like she was never having any fun. And there were so many times that the look on her face was, I am going to wring my agent's neck when I get my hands on him, because
like they went on the girls' trip to Miami, and she just goes outside the restaurant and just starts crying, and she's like, "This isn't me." It's like, oh man, go back to your children.
Yeah.
Go back to church on Sunday. This is not for you. That's okay. That's okay. But yeah, I mean, if you haven't watched Real House of Atlanta, if you're one of those people that's like, oh, I watch OC and Salt Lake City, but I've never seen Atlanta or Potomac, like, get on it. Come on.
Yeah. The ladies from Potomac appeared on Project Runway.
Yes, week. They did. They did.
Dr. Wendy creating
Dr.
confusion. I was like, come on, Wendy. It's on tape.
These conversations were being filmed. How dare you make that lady cry?
I mean, had the girl out there worried for her place in the competition.
And then sitting there in the workroom after the judging, like, well, I kept my mouth shut. Like, no, first of all, no, you didn't. Second of all, she asked you directly, do you mind if I make you some pants? And you were like, whatever you want to do.
We all saw it. We all heard it. I mean, it was astounding. And it was so interesting that it wasn't Giselle creating confusion.
Exactly.
And she was so well behaved on that episode.
It made me soften towards Giselle, because I'm Team Karen.
Yeah. I don't even have a reason for being Team Giselle. Maybe it's the pink connection. I don't know. Giselle reminds me of literally every girl I grew up with. Maybe that's what that is.
I would agree with that. But I mean, the Grande Dame is just the Grande Dame.
She certainly is, and she looked great. She looked fantastic.
Well, everyone check out that episode of Project Runway, because that was a good one. And
that was a good one.
Who's thinking about Project Runway in 2022? I was like, come on, relevance.
I was just sitting here counting how long it's been since I watched Project One.
It's very different now.
Yeah, it is.
With Christian Siriano instead of Tim Gunn, and there's no host.
No host.
It's just the judges are just like sitting in their chair, like, welcome to the runway, like screaming across the runway at the contestants. It's very low budge, but that was a good episode. I enjoyed it.
Yeah, it was.
But I think this is a good spot to leave this. I hope you all enjoyed part 1 of our Bologne extravaganza. We should think of a better name for next week for part 2. But next week we will have more amazing guests to talk about the life and music of Joseph Bologne. I hope you will enjoy. I hope you will join us for that. And meanwhile, as you are enjoying this beautiful week, perhaps at some point you might feel the urge to help us out by leaving us a review on Apple Podcasts or Spotify, or 5 stars. 5.
5. The number after 4.
Before 6.
There we go.
And after 4. 5. I'm not playing with y'all. I want 5 stars. But also subscribe on your favorite podcast platform of choice and share us with your friends. And the email is up and running, I promise. The score@mnopera.org. Please send us anything, thoughts, feelings, concerns, questions. We want to hear from all of you. And I think that's it. Did I miss anything?
I don't think so. I think we got it all.
Okay. Well, then I guess we'll see you in 2 weeks for part 2. Joseph Bologne. See you then.
Bye, everybody.
Bye, everybody. Thanks for listening. And thanks to our wonderful guests.
Amazing guest.
Bye.